Welcome to the Build a Purposeful, Profitable Business Doing What You Absolutely Love podcast, hosted weekly by Ange Dove, your business fairy godmother, professional copywriter, published author and business owner of 20 years. In every episode, Ange will deliver useful bite-sized insights to help you find your voice, position your value, demystify the marketing tech, and run your business on your terms.
Welcome to episode 9 of the podcast. Okay, this episode, I want to talk about something that had come up recently, and it's something that possibly you never really think about usually, but it's something that could be a problem in your marketing if you're not aware of this. And especially for those of you who are marketing to an international audience where English isn't necessarily the first language. And you want to be thinking about the type of language you're using in your marketing. And sometimes what I've seen is some marketers, they fall into the trap of using really clever language, usually trying to package their products together. And they come up with this clever language and sometimes trying to make the product sound really attractive. They're using vocabulary that might be quite unusual and it's not in normal everyday speak. Now that's great for maybe a native English speaking audience that will understand those words just as a matter of course. But you might have a problem when your audience is international and English isn't their first language and they may never have heard of that word. And if that's the case, that's actually going to interrupt your marketing message and it's going to stop that message going through because they're going to be so focused on that word they don't know that they're not going to focus on your actual message. I'll give you 2 examples that came up for me recently. So for those of you listening, if you know me, you probably know that although I'm from the UK, I live in Singapore. And Singapore's business language is English. And most people in Singapore have a very high level of English. And I would say actually their vocabulary level, because of the education system here, is very high in most cases. But because they're not exposed to the level of English that native English speakers would be exposed to, they will have some words missing in their vocabulary. And this came to light recently on 2 different occasions. One of them was I had a student ask me, she was thinking of using the word epic as part of her brand message and her product. So she's talking about leading an epic life, and epic was the word that made up her 4 parts of her system. So EPIC. Each letter stood for a different part of her system, so together it became EPIC. And the whole idea was that her coaching program can help people to balance all aspects of their life and therefore be able to live this wonderful epic life. Then it came to light when she tested it out on the market in Singapore that some people didn't actually understand the meaning of the word epic. So that's a major setback in a way for her whole campaign and her whole product creation, because if she's marketing within Singapore and that's the audience that she wants to focus on, and it extends beyond that. If she wanted to go into the Asia region, for example, where you're going to be dealing with other listeners or other customers that are English isn't used very often at all, they're definitely not going to understand that as a word. So that's the kind of thing that you need to be thinking of when you're creating your products, when you're putting your message out there. Is it simple enough? Is it a common word that people understand? Okay, so it can be surprising. You would think epic would be a word that people would understand, but you've got to do your market research. If you're going into these types of markets, you've really got to look at if it's something they can understand, or if it's not something easily understandable, it's something that you can very quickly and maybe visually explain so it doesn't become a block. in their understanding. Another occasion we had recently was another one with a lady. She was putting a product together, and she had 3 elements to it. So 3 different 3 elements that she wanted to all start with the letter P. So I can't remember what the other parts were. So she had 3 P. And one of the P's was powwow. And powwow, so my notifications are going off here. Should shut those down. So going back to this, her word, one of her words was powwow, because it was the only word she could think of beginning with P that would communicate the idea of communication and people communicating together. So one of her elements that she's teaching is the art of communication. So she came up with the word powwow. And again, I think to a normal, a native speaker of English, they're going to understand the word powwow. And it may, again, it's not such a usual word, so it may actually kind of get anyone off guard when they see it, but they'd understand it and they'd be able to see how it fits into the whole scheme. But again, if it's a native speaker, a non-native speaker, it's probably a word that they won't have heard of. And when we tested this out, the majority of the people that were exposed to this communication had no idea what the word meant and had never heard of it at all. And it was an immediate stumbling block for them. Immediate stumbling block where they were all going, you know, how do you spell that? What is it? What does it mean? And so they began focusing on that instead of focusing on the main message that the lady was trying to communicate. So just keep that in mind when you are putting your products together, when you're putting your offer together, that you're using everyday language, everyday words that your target audience will understand. And if you're putting it out to an international audience and you know that some of your audience are non-native speakers, but they are in key markets, like Singapore is quite a big market in terms of being able to communicate because they are English speaking. And when you're going out to other foreign countries abroad where the market will understand a good level of English, you just need to be able to re-look at your communication and just make sure you're using really, really everyday words. And then maybe test it out before you really commit to it, just to make sure, because you don't want to build your whole offer around a word like, for example, epic, and then after you've protected your IP, after you've built all your brand assets and you've built your courses or everything else that you want to do around that product, you don't later then want to find out that, oh, nobody really understands what this is all about. So just keep that in mind. That's just something I just wanted to bring to the table today, just to help you out on just something that you may not necessarily think about, or you may take for granted that because you understand certain words, everyone will. And just be reminded that if you are going after an international audience, it's something that you need to bear in mind and do some market research before you really commit. All right, that's it for today, and I look forward to seeing you or you listening to me in the next podcast. And if you like what you hear, do subscribe and do like, and do share with other people if you think this is something that will be useful for them to hear.